My wife thought I was falling apart.
She was wrong about bad, but I needed her to believe it, at least for a little while.
Because there's only one way to find out who someone really is. I mean, really is. Underneath all the good behavior. And that's to hand them a moment they never saw coming and watch what they do with it.
I watched. And what I saw changed everything. My name is Nathan Cole. I'm 42 years old. I live in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. I work in logistics, Senior Vice President of Operations at a firm called Kessler & Vance, one of the better mid-market shops in Manhattan. The kind of place that's been around long enough to know exactly what it's doing. 15 years there. 15 years of early mornings, late nights, missed dinners, cancelled plans. 15 years of building something slowly and carefully. The way my father taught me to build anything worth having. One brick at a time, no shortcuts. I bought my brownstone on Dobbin Street back in 2016. 3 floors, original hardwood. A back garden that never gets quite enough sun, though I've never minded that. I bought it alone, before I was married, with money I'd been saving since my late 20s. It was mine, my mortgage, my name on the title, my Saturday afternoons on my hands and knees, relaying tile in the kitchen. That house was the thing I was most proud of in my life. More than the job, more than the salary, more than any title anyone ever handed me. I met Vanessa in the spring of 2013. She was working in marketing then, not yet at Ashford and Pierce, just a smaller shop up in Midtown. We were introduced at a rooftop party in Long Island City through mutual friends. And she was the kind of woman who makes you forget what you were saying mid-sentence. Sharp, witty, driven in a way I found genuinely, immediately attractive. 2 years before I knew for certain I wanted to marry her. Another year after that, before I actually asked. We got married in the fall of 2018 at a small venue out by the Navy Yard. Nothing over the top, just the people we actually cared about. Good food, real music, a dance floor that didn't clear out until midnight. For the first several years it was good. We were a team, we worked hard, we saved. We built a life inside that brownstone that felt like ours, even though the deed only ever said my name. Vanessa contributed. She paid into our joint account. We split things fairly. Groceries, utilities, insurance, renovation bills, all of it together. The mortgage was always mine alone. That was just how we'd set it up from the beginning, and it never felt like a problem. Then, somewhere around the end of 2023, something started to shift. I couldn't have told you exactly what it was at first. It's never one big thing. In my experience, it's always smaller than that, the kind of shift you feel in your gut a long time before your mind is willing to catch up to it. The way she started taking calls in the hallway instead of on the couch. The way her evenings got a little less accountable. The way her phone would go dark the second I got close enough to see the screen. The way her answers to simple, reasonable questions started arriving half a second later than they used to. I've spent my whole career in operations. Pattern recognition isn't something I have to work at. It's just how my brain is built. And the pattern I was clocking in my own home, in my own marriage, was not one I wanted to be clocking. I told myself to slow down, not to jump to conclusions. Marriages go through seasons. Work stress does real things to real people, and Vanessa had been under a lot of pressure at Ashford and Pierce. I reminded myself of all the good years behind us. I told myself to trust what I knew. Here's the thing about trust. Well, there's a real version of it, the kind where you actually look at the evidence and reach a conclusion based on what's in front of you. And then there's the other kind, the kind where you choose not to look, because some part of you already suspects what the evidence would show, and you're not ready to face it. I was doing the second kind, and somewhere underneath everything, I already knew it. The evening that finally cracked things open happened in the middle of December, 2024. Vanessa and I had plans to meet for dinner at Rosa's Table on Green Street, an old Italian place we'd been going to for years. The kind of spot where the owner's wife greets you by name and the bread shows up before you ask for it. We'd started going there back when we were dating, and it had always felt like ours. She texted around 7 to say she was running 45 minutes behind. A client meeting had run long. I told her no problem, ordered a glass of wine and the bread, and settled in. She arrived almost 2 hours after we were supposed to meet. I watched her come through the door, same work clothes from that morning, but her hair was different, freshly blown out. The way she does it when she's somewhere she wants to look good. She hugged me, kissed my cheek, said the meeting had been an absolute disaster and she was so sorry she'd lost track of time. The client was impossible. She was breezy, relaxed, that specific kind of calm that only comes from having already decided well in advance. Exactly what you're going to say when you walk through a door. I smiled and told her it was fine. It wasn't fine. I just didn't say that part out loud. I sat across from her and asked about her week. I split the pasta with her. I walked her home through the cold December streets with my hand at the small of her back, like everything was exactly the way it had always been. But something had settled in my chest that night. Something quiet and cold, not anger yet, more like the feeling you get staring at a spreadsheet where the numbers don't quite reconcile, and you already know you're going to have to sit down eventually and find the error. I started paying closer attention after that. The careful kind. The kind that never announces itself. I noticed the timing of her calls. I started keeping a mental log of the evenings that didn't add up. I pulled our shared phone plan statements, not reading her messages. Nothing like that, just the call log. And I found a number that kept showing up. Sometimes late afternoon, sometimes evening. Not every day, but consistent enough to mean something. Then, in mid-January, I heard a name. We were in the living room on a Sunday afternoon. She was on the couch, on a call, and clearly thought I wasn't paying attention. I was across the room with my laptop, and she said, in a tone of voice I hadn't heard from her in longer than I wanted to think about, warm, almost playful, "Tell Marcus I'll handle it." She glanced up, caught my eye. The warmth evaporated instantly. Later, when I dropped the name into conversation, casually, like it meant nothing. She told me Marcus was a new hire at Ashford and Pierce, a media buyer, young guy, good at his job. Nothing to it. Maybe. The weeks that followed were some of the longest I've spent inside a marriage. I went to work. I came home. I sat across from Vanessa at dinner and talked about her day. The news, the neighbours, whether we should finally fix the dryer that had been making that noise since November. I was present. I was civil. I was, I think, very good at appearing completely fine while running a constant background process inside my head that I couldn't shut off, no matter how hard I tried. I want to be honest about something. I hadn't decided to leave. I wasn't in that place yet. What I was actually doing was watching, waiting, and quietly hoping that whatever my gut was telling me would turn out to be wrong. Because the alternative, the thing I'd have to do if it turned out to be right, wasn't something I was eager to face. 12 years together, 9 years married, a home we'd built with our own hands. You don't dismantle that without first being absolutely certain you understand what you're actually looking at. Then, on a Thursday morning in early March of 2025, I got the best professional news of my life. My director, Margaret Doyle, called me into her office on the 4th floor of our building on West 34th Street. Margaret was the kind of executive who never wasted a word. 30 years in logistics will do that to a person. Teach you the particular economy of language that comes from spending decades in rooms where time is money. She told me the board had approved the SVP restructuring. The Senior Vice President of Operations role was mine, effective April 1st. Base salary of $185,000 plus performance bonuses tied to quarterly targets. I thanked her, shook her hand, walked out into the hallway, and stood there for a moment outside her door, feeling the weight of 15 years of work settle into my chest like something warm. Then I got on the elevator to head back down to my floor, and somewhere between the 4th floor and the 2nd, a different thought walked in and sat down next to the first one. What is she going to do when I tell her? Not what will she say, what will she do? I'd been watching Vanessa for 3 months by then. I knew what her performed reactions looked like. I knew the difference between her real face and the one she puts on when she's already decided in advance what a moment is going to be. And standing in that elevator, I realized something uncomfortable. I didn't actually know, not for certain, what she would do if something significant changed for me. I knew what I hoped she'd do. Hope and knowledge are not the same thing. That's when the idea arrived. Simple. Clean. Almost embarrassing in how obvious it was once I let myself think it. What if she believed things had gotten worse instead of better? I'm not a man who plays games. That's genuinely not who I am. But I am a man who understands that if you want the real answer to a question, sometimes you have to ask it sideways instead of head-on. And the question I needed answered more than anything else in my life at that moment was this. When I'm at my lowest, what does my wife actually do? I rode the train home that evening, walked up Dobbin Street in the early March cold, went through the front door, hung my coat on the hook, walked into the kitchen. Vanessa was at the counter with her phone. She glanced up. "Hey!" "Hey!" I said back. She put the phone face down on the counter. That little reflex she'd developed, always face down now. "How was your day?" I sat down at the kitchen table and said, as evenly as I could manage, "Actually, not great. Margaret called me in this morning. Budget restructuring. They're eliminating my position." The room went still. Vanessa looked at me. I looked back. I watched her face the way you watch a road when you're not sure what's waiting past the curve. "Wait," she said. "What?" "They let me go, effective end of the month." She came around the counter and sat across from me at the table, and for about 6 seconds I counted. Because I was paying very close attention, her face was genuinely shocked, soft, concerned, the face of someone who wasn't expecting this. 6 seconds. Then it shifted. Not dramatically, just a kind of settling. The way a face settles when the mind has caught up and started calculating. "What did they say exactly?" She leaned forward on her elbows. "Is there a severance package? Did they give you a reason?" "They mentioned a package. Standard. Interest. They said standard for my level." "You've been there 15 years, Nathan. That should be significant." She nodded slowly, already 3 steps ahead of me. "Is this just you, or a broader round of cuts?" "Just me, as far as I know." She stood, went back to the counter, and picked her phone back up. Let me tell you what she didn't do. She didn't come around the table and put her arms around me. She didn't say anything that started with "we." Not "we'll figure this out." Not "we'll be okay." Not even just "we." Standing alone. She didn't ask how I was feeling. She didn't ask what I needed. She stood there with her phone in her hand and told me, in a very reasonable voice, that I should reach out to my network. The people at my level don't stay unemployed long. That I had good contacts and should use them. She said it like she was reading off a checklist. Practical, efficient, somewhere very far away from how a person who loves you responds when your entire world just came apart at the kitchen table. I nodded, said I was tired, went upstairs. I sat on the edge of our bed in the dark for a long time. 9 years of marriage. That's what we'd built. I hadn't been looking for a reason to walk away. I want to be clear about that. I'd been looking, desperately, for a reason to stay. I wanted her to fail the test I'd set for her. I wanted her to look at me with her real face and say something that cost her something. Something real. She didn't do that. She did the math on my severance package, and sitting there in the dark. I didn't yet know that what she'd just shown me in that kitchen was barely the beginning. I didn't know that the very next day. In that same house. I was going to overhear something that would take everything I thought I understood about my marriage and turn it completely upside down. But we'll get there. That night. Vanessa made dinner like nothing had happened. Lamb chops, my favourite. I sat at the dining table while the news played quietly in the background, and she talked about a campaign her team was pitching the following week, and her friend Nicole's complicated situation with her husband, and whether the back garden needed reseeding in the spring. Normal. All of it so aggressively, deliberately normal. Like she'd already decided the job thing was processed and filed, and we were simply moving forward. I ate the lamb chops. I made the right noises at the right moments. I watched her when she went up to take a bath, and then I sat downstairs by myself and thought about the last 3 months. December. Marcus. The phone, always face down. The way she'd looked at me when I told her I'd lost my job, that 6-second flash of real surprise, right before the calculator switched on behind her eyes. I thought about what I actually knew versus what I was still only guessing at, and I decided I needed to stop guessing. She came to bed a little after 10, kissed me on the cheek, quick, dry, and was asleep within minutes. I lay next to her with my eyes open, running through everything I knew and everything I didn't, until well past 2 in the morning. Even then, it wasn't real sleep, just my body shutting down because it had run out of other options. And then morning came. Before I tell you what happened that next afternoon, you need a couple of facts. They're load-bearing. You need them to understand what I heard and why it landed the way it did. First, the house. The brownstone on Dobbin Street was mine alone. I bought it in 2016, 2 years before Vanessa and I married. My name only on the deed, on the mortgage, on everything. When we married in 2018, she moved in, but her name was never added to the title. Not because it was ever a point of tension between us, it was simply my asset, and we both understood that from the start. She contributed to household expenses, she paid into our joint account, but the mortgage always came out of my personal account. And every major repair or renovation, the HVAC system, the roof, the full kitchen remodel we did in 2023 was either entirely or primarily funded by me. Second, Vanessa's mother, Lorraine Voss, 67 years old, living in a co-op out in Flushing. I'd been married to her daughter 7 years, and I could count on one hand the number of times Lorraine had said something to me that felt like it came without some quiet arithmetic underneath it. She was civil, never openly rude, but there was something in the way she looked at me, a particular measuring quality that I'd noticed from the very beginning and never quite been able to shake. It always made me feel like I was being evaluated instead of welcomed. Vanessa talked to her mother almost every day. In hindsight, I probably should have sat with that fact a little more carefully than I did. The next morning, Vanessa left for work at her usual time. She kissed me goodbye at the door, that same quick, dry press of lips she'd been giving me for months, and said she hoped I'd get some good conversations going with my contacts. I told her I would. She left. I locked the door. I had taken the day off. I had plenty of personal time banked, and I genuinely could not sit in an office chair and pretend everything was fine. What I did instead, and this wasn't something I planned with any real precision, just the instinct of a man who works in operations and knows that information is the most valuable resource in any negotiation, was go into the second bedroom and pull out the folder I'd been quietly building for the past couple of months. Bank statements from our joint account, phone plan logs, notes to myself about specific evenings, specific patterns, nothing dramatic, nothing illegal, just the careful documentation of a man who'd learned over 15 years of business that you never walk into a negotiation without knowing exactly what the numbers say. I spent the morning going through everything, organizing by date, thinking about what I actually wanted and what my options were. And then, around 20 minutes to 1 in the afternoon, I heard the front door open. I went completely still. Vanessa wasn't due back before 6:30 at the earliest. I'd watched her leave that morning myself. I hadn't heard from her since. I stayed exactly where I was and listened. 2 sets of footsteps. The particular double rhythm of 2 people coming through a door together. Not one. And then, from the hallway, 2 floors below me, a voice that made my chest go cold. Lorraine. Old Brooklyn brownstones carry sound in a specific way. Plaster walls, high ceilings, voices travel through the floors like water moving through paper. I'd known that about my house for 9 years. I'd never been more grateful for it than I was in that moment. I heard them move into the kitchen. The refrigerator opened. The kettle went on. 2 chairs scraped against the tile. Then the sound of two women settling in at my kitchen table in the middle of a Thursday afternoon like they owned the place. And then Lorraine said it. "So, how's he taking it?" Just that. Simple. Like she'd been waiting all morning for the answer. Vanessa was quiet for a moment. "About how I expected," she finally said. Went quiet. Kind of shut down. "You know how he is. He internalizes everything." Went upstairs. Sat with it. No argument. No blow-up. That's not Nathan. He doesn't explode. He just goes inside himself and processes it alone. A small pause. Which, honestly, that's good. Actually, emotional would have been harder to manage. Harder to manage? I want you to sit with that phrase the way I sat with it. Not harder to deal with. Not harder to be around. Harder to manage. Like I was a situation to be contained. Not a husband who'd just come home and told her the worst professional news of his life. I sat very still and let it land. The kettle clicked off. I heard it being poured. "So what's next?" Vanessa said. "I think the timing actually couldn't be better. He's going to be off balance right now. He won't want confrontation. He won't want complications. This is the window." "And Marcus," Lorraine said. "You're still certain about Marcus?" "Marcus isn't a complication. He knows exactly what this is. I'd heard that name in my own living room back in January. I'd heard my wife explain it away as a co-worker, a new hire. Nothing. I'd talked myself down from the ledge more than once since then. I was done doing that now." "And the house?" Lorraine asked. Her voice was comfortable, unhurried. The voice of someone who'd been thinking about this for a good long while. "That's the part I have to handle carefully," Vanessa said immediately, like she'd had this exact speech ready to go. "His name's on the title alone. I checked again last month. That's the challenge. But I talked to a family law attorney over on Madison Avenue a couple of weeks ago, and she thinks my position is actually stronger than I assumed." 7 years of marriage. 7 years of financial contribution to the household. New York's an equitable distribution state. That matters. I heard Lorraine make a sound somewhere between a breath and a laugh. "I told you the day you married him, you should have pushed to get on that deed." "I know. Ambition without leverage is just energy." Silence from Vanessa. "What about his finances?" Lorraine continued. "The savings. He keeps his business accounts completely separate. Always has. Private about money in a way that used to frustrate me. Honestly, but right now I think it works in a strange way. He's not going to be transparent about those accounts during a settlement, which means the joint account is what we're actually working with. And I've been building that steadily for 2 years. I have records." "And you think he'll negotiate quietly?" "He won't want ugliness. That's not who he is. He'll want it resolved cleanly. And if he believes he's in a weakened position, which he does right now, because he thinks he's unemployed, he's going to be more willing to settle fast and settle low." I heard every word of that sentence clearly, and I let it settle into me the way cold water settles, slowly, completely, reaching every corner on the way down. She was going to use what she believed was my lowest moment as leverage in a legal fight over my own house. She had planned it. She had an attorney. She had records. She had a timeline. She had walked her mother through every piece of it, calmly, at my kitchen table, while the kettle steamed between them. "What about his brother?" Lorraine asked. "The one in Philadelphia, Adam. He and Nathan are close, but Adam doesn't get involved in other people's business. Nathan wouldn't ask him for that kind of help anyway. He's too proud." Too proud. She had me mapped. She genuinely believed she knew exactly how I'd respond, what I would and wouldn't do. And she'd built her entire plan on top of those predictions. She had one problem, though. She was working from incomplete information. "You know," Lorraine said. Somewhere in the comfortable middle of that conversation, I always liked Nathan well enough. I just never thought he was quite enough for where you're going. Vanessa said nothing for a long moment. Then quietly, "I know, Mom." I sat in that chair and listened to my mother-in-law tell my wife I wasn't enough for her. And my wife didn't disagree. The kettle was still warm in my own kitchen, and the two of them were perfectly comfortable, sitting right there at my table. dismantling my life like it was a Tuesday errand. I did not move. Not yet. I waited until they shifted into the living room. Then I stood up very slowly, walked to the bathroom connected to the second bedroom, closed the door without a sound, and turned on the cold tap. I stood over the sink and looked at my own face in the mirror. 42 years old, grey coming into the beard, a face that had looked back at me through 15 years of building things the hard way. She doesn't know I'm up here. She doesn't know I got the promotion. She doesn't know I heard every single word. And right there, staring at myself, I made the decision that would shape everything that came after. I was not going to react, not going downstairs, not blowing this up today, not yet. I was going to be calm, organized, and I was going to protect what was mine with the exact same patience and precision I'd used to build every single thing in my life worth having. Because whoever controls the information controls the outcome. I've known that since I was 25 years old. And right now, I had all of it. She had none. I went back to the desk, opened my laptop, and sent one email. Not to a lawyer, not to Vanessa, to my brother, Adam Cole, down in Philadelphia. Subject line, call me tonight. Don't mention this to anyone. Then I sat back, folded my hands, and listened to the sound of my wife and her mother in the living room below me, discussing whether the back garden needed new furniture. Adam called just past 9 that evening. By then, Lorraine had been gone a couple of hours. Vanessa had come upstairs around 4:30 with a glass of water, and what I now recognized clearly as her performance of concern. The tilted head, the careful eyes, the "how are you doing up here?" delivered in a tone calibrated to land exactly right. I told her I'd reached out to a few contacts and was waiting to hear back. She said she was proud of how I was handling it. I told her thank you. Then I went and sat in the back garden and waited for my brother. Adam is 39, 3 years younger than me, a civil engineer in Philadelphia, and without question the most methodical thinker I've ever known. We don't talk every week. Life doesn't always allow for it. But when we do, there's never any wasted language between us. We cut straight to what matters, always have. Talk to me, he said. So I did. I started at December, at Rose's table, the freshly done hair. I told him about the patterns I'd tracked for 3 months, about the name Marcus, and the phone always face down, and the call logs I'd been quietly reviewing. I told him about the promotion that morning. Yes, the promotion. $185,000, and about the fake firing I'd delivered at the kitchen table that evening, and what Vanessa had done in response. Then I told him what I'd heard. 2 floors above my own kitchen that afternoon. Adam was quiet for a long time when I finished. Long enough that I checked the screen to see if the call had dropped. The house, he finally said. That's still in your name alone, always has been. Yes. And she went to a family law attorney 2 weeks ago. That's what she told your mother-in-law. Yes. Then she's been planning this significantly longer than 2 weeks. You don't consult a family attorney without already having made a decision. That's not a preliminary conversation. That's strategy. A pause. You need legal counsel. Not Monday. Tomorrow. It's Friday. I know what day it is. I have someone in Manhattan, Walter Sinclair, been practicing real estate and family law for 30 years. He owes me a professional favor I've never called in. I'm texting him tonight. Don't be surprised if you have an appointment before noon tomorrow. I started to say something about the joint account. He stopped me before I could finish the thought. Don't touch it. I know what you're thinking. Don't do it. You don't move a dollar without legal guidance, because if you move first and it looks reactive, she uses it. She's been deliberately building that account for 2 years. She said so herself. I know. And her deposits are documented. But so are yours. Your income into that account is on record too. A good attorney knows exactly what to do with that. Just leave it alone for now. A pause. How are you holding up, Deshma? I'm okay. A longer pause. Ben, it's me. I leaned back in the patio chair and looked up at the Brooklyn sky, that particular shade of not quite dark. The ambient glow of 10 million people surrounding you. Close enough to feel, never quite close enough to see.
It's strange, I said. I thought I'd be angrier. I thought once I had the full picture. I'd feel something bigger.
I just feel very clear. Clear is better than angry, Adam said. Clear wins.
I know. What do you actually want when this is over? What does the other side look like?
I thought about it for a long moment.
I want my house, I said. I want what I've built to stay built. I want to come out of this with what I put in, not more, not less.
Then that's what we're working toward. We stayed on the phone another half hour.
Adam walked me through what he knew about New York equitable distribution law left over from his own divorce 6 years back. He wasn't a lawyer, but he'd done the homework the painful way, and it showed. By the time I went back inside, I had a rough map of the territory in my head, and I knew which direction I needed to walk in. Vanessa was on the couch when I came in, watching something on the television. She looked up and gave me that small, measured smile she'd been giving me all evening.
Any luck out there?
Better getting there, I said.
I sat down beside her.
After a few minutes, she reached over and put her hand on my knee. I put my hand over hers. We watched television for 45 minutes, and I didn't absorb a single second of it. The next morning, before Vanessa was even out of bed, Adam had texted Walter Sinclair. 10 a.m. tomorrow, 47th between Lex and 3rd. 14th floor. He'll be expecting you. I told Vanessa over breakfast I was meeting an old contact from my Kessler days uptown, someone who might know of an opening in the pipeline. She said that was smart, told me to eat something before I left. Walter Sinclair's office sat on the 14th floor of a glass tower on 47th Street, the kind of building that tells you immediately, without needing to say it out loud, that this is where serious money goes to sort out serious problems. Walter himself was 61, silver-haired, with the particular stillness you only find in people who've spent 30 years in rooms where very high stakes are negotiated very quietly. His handshake belonged to a man who had never once, in his entire career, felt out of his depth. He didn't do small talk. He just looked at me across the desk and said, "Tell me what you're dealing with." So I told him. The house, purchased in 2016, my name alone, predating the 2018 marriage. The marriage itself, 7 years of it. Vanessa's genuine financial contributions to joint household expenses. The mortgage, always paid from my separate account. The renovations I'd funded, the HVAC in 2021, the roof in 2022, the kitchen remodel in 2023, $24,000 total, of which Vanessa had contributed $4,500 from the joint account, and I'd covered the remaining $19,500 from mine. The promotion, effective the day before. Senior Vice President, $185,000 a year. The fake firing I'd delivered. What Vanessa had done in response, and what I'd heard. Through the floor of my own second bedroom, the following afternoon. Walter listened without a single interruption. He didn't write anything down while I talked, just listened, with the complete, unhurried attention of a man who knew exactly what to do with information once he finally had all of it. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "First question," he said. "Is divorce what you want? Because everything after this depends on the honest answer." I looked at him. "I went into yesterday thinking I was testing a marriage I wanted to save," I said. "By yesterday afternoon, I was listening to my wife and her mother plan a legal strategy against me, at my own kitchen table." I held his gaze. "I want to protect what's mine, and I want to do it right." He nodded once. "Then here's where you stand." He was methodical. He walked me through New York's equitable distribution framework, the way a surgeon explains a procedure precisely, without drama, without any unnecessary comfort. The brownstone was separate property as a baseline, because I'd purchased it before the marriage and it was titled solely in my name. Vanessa's legal position would likely rest on 2 claims. Her contributions to the household during the marriage, entitling her to credit, and any appreciation in the property's value during the marriage becoming a point of negotiation. "Has she ever contributed to the mortgage directly?" he asked. Never. Always came out of my separate account. He made a note. That's significant. Documented thoroughly. Every payment. Every statement. Going back to the beginning. I have them. Something in his expression settled. Not quite a smile. Close. Good. Now the joint account. I told him what I'd overheard. Vanessa's deliberate deposits over 2 years. Her claim to have records. Her plan to use the account as a component of the settlement. She's correct that joint marital funds are subject to equitable distribution, Walter said, but the calculation depends heavily on the proportion of contributions. If your deposits substantially exceed hers over the life of the account, that changes the math. Can you document your deposits going back? I've been pulling statements for 2 months. I can go back further. He nodded. Here's what you do not do. You don't move funds out of that account. You don't close it. You don't change beneficiaries on anything, anywhere. You don't touch life insurance designations. You don't touch anything that currently exists. Everything stays exactly where it is until I tell you otherwise. Any unilateral financial movement right now reads as reactive, and reactive is the worst position you can be in. My brother said the same thing. Smart brother. He clicked his pen. Now, tell me about Marcus. I told him what I knew. The name from January. The frequency on the phone logs. What I'd overheard Vanessa say about him, that he knew exactly what this was. Do you have documentation of communication between them? Call logs from our shared plan. I believe I've identified his number based on frequency and timing. No message content. All right. Infidelity in New York divorce proceedings is a complicated area. It can affect certain financial considerations, but it isn't the primary driver of equitable distribution. Don't confront either of them about this. Don't take any action in that direction without talking to me first. What you have right now is information, and information is most valuable when the other side doesn't know you have it. I understood that principle better than he probably realized. We talked for another 40 minutes. He'd begin building the legal position. I would gather documentation, full mortgage history, bank records, credit card statements, renovation receipts, the entire paper trail of every dollar I'd ever put into that brownstone. We'd reconvene the following Thursday. Before I left, he asked, "Have you formally accepted the SVP promotion in writing yet?" "Not yet. I haven't sent the signed letter back." "Accept it today. Email them your acceptance. Ask for confirmation of receipt. I want that on record, officially, with a timestamp, before anything else moves." I accepted the promotion from the lobby of Walter's building, right there on my phone, before I even stepped outside. Sent it to Margaret Doyle's office email. Got a response within 20 minutes. "Congratulations, Nathan. Welcome to the SVP team. Looking forward to April 1st. I stood on 47th Street in the thin, cold Manhattan sunshine, and for just a moment, I let myself actually feel it. The promotion. The 15 years. The work. Then I put the phone in my pocket and went home. That Saturday evening, I cooked dinner. Pasta, something I hadn't done in a while. Vanessa looked genuinely surprised when she walked into the kitchen and found me at the stove. "What's the occasion?" "No occasion. Just felt like it." She sat at the counter and watched me cook. And we talked about her co-worker's new apartment in Astoria, and a documentary she'd been meaning to watch, and whether the garden needed reseeding in the spring. Conversation that felt, on the surface, like any ordinary Saturday from any ordinary year of our marriage. I made the pasta, poured 2 glasses of wine, plated hers, and set it in front of her. At one point she said, "I'm really glad you're not spiraling about the job thing. I know how much Kessler means to you." Spiraling. I filed that word away. "I'm working through it," I told her. "I know you are." She reached across the counter and touched my arm. "That's what I love about you, Nathan. You're steady." Steady. She said it like it was a simple thing, a personality trait. She had no idea that the steadiness she was admiring wasn't resignation, or numbness, or defeat. It was preparation. The days that followed were some of the strangest I've ever lived through. I went back to the office Monday, because I had never actually lost my job, and because the promotion was sitting confirmed in my inbox. because I wasn't going to let any of this derail 15 years of work. Every morning, I left the brownstone and told Vanessa I had meetings with contacts, informational interviews, calls with people from my network. She'd nod and look at me with that brand of sympathetic support I now understood completely. She thought she was managing me. And the thing that unsettled me most, more than the anger, more than the grief, more than the practical dread of what was coming, was how calm she was. A guilty person, someone who knows on some level they're doing something wrong, usually carries a certain restlessness, little tells. An over-explanation here, an over-correction there, some part of the body that knows, even when the mind has decided to proceed anyway. Vanessa wasn't restless. She was making dinner and doing laundry and asking how the search was going, with the ease of someone who'd already done the math and was entirely comfortable with the answer. She thought I was going to be easy to handle. On a Wednesday evening, about a week after the kitchen conversation, I called Adam from the back garden. Walter's team dug something up, he said, on Marcus. Marcus Vale, 34, media buyer at Ashford and Pierce, started last September, single. A pause. I didn't dig deep, just confirmed what we suspected. Hell, LinkedIn, and a mutual contact who works in that building. Didn't ask anything direct, just confirmed the name lines up. I stood in the garden and looked up at the sky. Okay, I said. How are you? Good. I'm good. He didn't push it further. That's the thing about Adam. He doesn't need you to perform fine. He just listens to the actual answer. The following Thursday, I walked into Walter's office with a folder that would have made any organized man proud. Complete mortgage payment history dating back to 2016. Bank statements from both the joint account and my separate accounts going back to the beginning of the marriage. A full accounting of the joint account deposits, showing my contributions represented 71% of the account's total growth over the life of the marriage. Receipts and invoices for every significant home expenditure. I'd personally funded the HVAC system in 2021 at $8,400. The roof repair in 2022 at $6,200. The 2023 kitchen renovation at a total of $24,000, of which I'd covered $19,500 personally. Walter went through each item with the same methodical attention he'd given my first conversation. When he set the last document down, he looked up. This is solid work, he said. Your separate property position is well supported. Her attorney will still make arguments. That's what attorneys do. But the documentary foundation here is strong. Then he asked the question I'd been waiting for. Have you accepted the promotion in writing? Yes, the Monday after our first meeting. Confirmation came back the same day. He allowed himself a small, genuine smile. Good. Here's what I want you to understand about where we are. She went to her attorney with one picture of your situation. An unemployed husband, one major asset. A wife with 7 years of documented contributions and a strong grasp of equitable distribution law. That was the hand she thought she was holding. He paused. When we respond through formal legal channels with full financial disclosure, she and her attorney are going to see a completely different picture. A senior vice president making $185,000 a year. 15 years of documented separate mortgage payments. A property acquisition that predates the marriage by 2 years. He leaned forward slightly. That moment is going to matter, and she's going to experience it through her attorney, not from you directly, which means she has zero opportunity to prepare for it in advance. I nodded slowly. One more thing, Walter said. She told her mother she planned to raise the conversation the divorce, the separation, whatever she's calling it, within 3 to 4 weeks of that Friday. That puts us in the last week of March. When she brings it up, you listen. You say you need time to think. You don't mention the promotion, the attorney, any of this. You call me immediately. Can you do that? Yes. Then we're ready. I walked out of that building into the afternoon light and thought, we are very ready. She chose a Friday evening to do it. I'd counted the days since the kitchen conversation and marked the last week of March in my mind, exactly like she'd told Lorraine she would. So when I walked through the front door on a Friday evening toward the end of March and found her standing in the living room, the television already off, a particular careful stillness in her posture, I recognized what this was before she said a single word. "Hey," she said, "can we talk?" "Of course." I hung my coat on the hook. "Let me get some water." I went to the kitchen slowly, filled a glass, took a breath that was visible to no one but me, walked back to the living room, and sat in the armchair across from her. She'd sat on the couch, hands in her lap. Everything about her was arranged. The posture, the expression, the placement of herself in the room. She'd rehearsed this, probably more than once. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, "about us, about where we are." I said nothing. "I think we've been moving in different directions for a while now. I think we've both probably known that for longer than either of us has said out loud." She waited. "Okay," I said. She blinked. She'd expected a different response, some resistance, some immediate reaction she could work against. She adjusted quickly. She was good at adjusting, but I caught the half-second recalibration behind her eyes. "I think we should consider separating," she said. "I think it would be better for both of us, long term." "What does separating look like to you?" "We'd each need our own space. I'd need to find somewhere. We'd have to figure out the practical side of the house, the accounts, how to do it fairly. The house, right on schedule, right in the first paragraph, exactly like I knew it would be." "What's your sense of what's fair with the house?" I asked. She'd prepared for this too. 7 years of marriage, 7 years of financial contribution. Her sense that she deserved those years, recognized in any settlement. It was well organized. Her attorney had done good work. When she finished, I said, "Have you spoken to anyone about this, professionally?" A pause. "I've had some preliminary conversations, yes. A family law attorney." She looked at me more carefully. "Yes. When did you do that?" "A few weeks ago." I nodded. "Then you should know that I have too." The room got very quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't comfortable for anyone in it. "When?" she said. "The morning after we talked about the job. That was the very next day. You couldn't have already been—" "I wasn't," I said. "But I needed to understand what I was actually looking at. So I went and found out." She was still processing. "I've spent the last few weeks putting together documentation," I continued. "Mortgage history going back to 2016, bank statements, deposit records from the joint account, home improvement receipts. Every dollar I've ever put into this property, tracked and sourced." Her hands had stopped moving in her lap. "Vanessa?" I held her gaze. "I've been in this house every day since that Friday." She understood immediately. I watched it move across her face, not a slow dawning, but a fast collapse. The way a building holds for 1 second after the supports give, and then goes all at once. "The Friday I came home," I said. I heard everything. The silence that settled over the room after that was a different kind of silence than anything that had come before in this marriage. For me, it was familiar territory. I'd been living inside this information for 3 weeks. I'd organized around it, built a strategy around it, made peace with parts of it that I was, honestly, still making peace with. For her, it was brand new ground, and it was shifting under her feet in real time. "Nathan, you don't need to explain it to me. I'm not here to perform anger at you. I've had time to get past that." A breath. "What I'm here to do is make sure this gets handled correctly and fairly." She opened her mouth, closed it. "Marcus Vale," I said, "media buyer, started at Ashford in September, 34. She looked away, toward the window. That was enough. "I'm not going to make this ugly," I said. "I want you to hear that and believe it, because I mean it. But I need you to understand something. I have legal counsel, I have documentation, and whatever your attorney's position looks like, based on the information she had when you first walked into her office. I need you to go back and have that conversation again, because the information has changed." She looked back at me. Her voice was careful. "What information?" I reached into my jacket pocket, took out the single folded piece of paper I'd carried in there that morning, set it on the coffee table between us, slid it across. She picked it up, unfolded it. The offer letter from Kessler and Vance, the letterhead, the title Senior Vice President of Operations, the salary. $185,000, effective April 1st, 2025.
She read it once. She read it again. When she looked up, her face carried the particular quality of someone who's just discovered the hand they spent 3 months building was constructed around a card that isn't in the deck.
"You were promoted," she said. "On the same morning you came home and told me you'd been fired." "I was never fired, not for one day." She was very quiet. "You tested me. You were planning to use the appearance of my vulnerability as leverage in a legal case over my house." I kept my voice level. No anger, no performance. "We both had tests running that week. You just failed yours first." She set the letter down on the coffee table. "How long have you known about everything?" "Since the Friday afternoon I spent in the second bedroom while you and your mother had your conversation in my kitchen. 3 weeks.
She absorbed that.
And you went to work, you came home, you cooked dinner on Saturday, "I was organized," I said. "That's all." The divorce took just over 4 months start to finish. Her attorney, a capable woman named Priya Malhotra, whose office was exactly where Vanessa had told Lorraine it would be, filed the initial claim based on what Vanessa knew the day she walked through that door. An unemployed husband, one major asset in his name, a wife with 7 years of documented household contributions and a solid grasp of how New York equitable distribution works. That picture was accurate as far as it went. The problem was how far it went. When Walter's response came back full financial disclosure, employment confirmation, complete mortgage payment history, deposit analysis from the joint account, renovation receipts. Priya requested a 30-day extension to reassess her client's position. She got it. And then we negotiated. I want to be clear about what I actually asked for in that negotiation, because I think it matters. I wasn't trying to leave Vanessa with nothing. 7 years of genuine household contributions are real, and I was never going to pretend otherwise. She paid into our joint life faithfully for 7 years. That counts for something. What it doesn't count for is a claim on a property I purchased 2 years before I ever married her, with money I spent a decade saving, and maintained entirely from my own income for the 9 years of our marriage. What Vanessa received in the final settlement was fair. A structured cash payment, calculated against her verified contributions to the household. A proportional share of the joint savings, based on documented deposits. Full credit for the $4,500 she'd put toward the 2023 kitchen renovation. What she did not receive was the house. The brownstone on Dobbin Street remained exactly where it had always been, in my name, on my deed, carrying my mortgage. The last time I saw Lorraine was in the hallway outside the mediator's conference room on a Tuesday afternoon in July. She was there with Vanessa. She looked at me exactly the way she always had, that same measuring gaze, calculating, trying to figure out what something is worth, I thought, standing in that hallway. About everything she'd said at my kitchen table. About how I wasn't quite enough. About ambition without leverage, being just energy. About the house. You miscalculated the asset. Lorraine, the whole time you were looking at the property, you missed the man who built the foundation. I didn't say any of it out loud. I just held the door for them. Lorraine walked through without meeting my eyes. Vanessa stopped in the doorway for a moment and actually looked at me. Really looked. The first time she'd done that in a long time. Then she walked through too. I let the door close behind them. I'll say a brief word about Marcus Vale, since I know you're wondering. What I know is that by the fall of 2025, roughly 6 months after the divorce was filed, things between Vanessa and Marcus had already developed the kind of complications that tend to develop when something new is built on, the rubble of something it helped destroy. I'm not going to go into detail. Honestly, I don't have much interest in the detail. What I'll say is this. People don't tend to be fundamentally different with the next person than they were with the last. That's not a judgment, it's just a pattern that holds. I bear the man no specific ill will. He intersected with my life briefly and at an angle. That chapter's closed. It's early September now, 2025. 6 months since all of this started. I'm sitting in the back garden on Dobbin Street on a Saturday morning.
The patio chairs Vanessa and I never used enough. I use them now most Saturday mornings. Coffee and a physical newspaper from the deli on Manhattan Avenue, because I still buy an actual paper like a man 20 years older than I am. I'm not going to apologize for it. The September light in Brooklyn has a particular quality I've noticed every year I've lived here. It comes in at an angle, clean, clear, slightly golden the way light gets when summer finally decides to let go and something quieter moves in. I've always liked September for that. The sense of things settling. The brownstone is mine. The SVP role went effective April 1st, right on schedule. The team at Kessler is strong. The work is good. I go in every day with a clarity I haven't felt in a couple of years, because the weight I was carrying, without fully admitting I was carrying it, it's gone now. And I can feel the difference in my body. Honestly, not just my mind. I'm not going to tell you I've arrived somewhere perfectly sorted and whole. I'm 42. There's plenty of road left, and I have no real idea what most of it looks like yet. But here's what I know. I was complicit for too long in not looking at what was right in front of me. I chose, for an extended stretch of time, the easier version of my own marriage over the true one. That's on me as much as it's on anyone. But when I finally looked when I sat in that second-bedroom chair and heard my own home being carved up around me, I didn't panic. I didn't blow up. I didn't make a single move I couldn't justify later. I organized. I documented. I found the right people. I waited. And I came out the other side with what I'd spent 15 years building still fully intact. Here's what I want to leave you with. Being underestimated is not a weakness. In the right hands, it's the cleanest advantage available to you in any room. She thought she was using my low moment as a window to act against me. She was right that it was a window. She just never found out which side of the glass I was standing on until it was already too late to change the outcome. You can build for a long time. You can be patient for a long time. You can work quietly, document carefully, and stay steady when every instinct in your body is screaming at you to react. And then, when the moment comes, and the moment always comes, you don't have to say very much at all. You just slide a piece of paper across a coffee table and let them do the math. So let me ask you something directly. If you found out the person you trusted most was quietly planning against you, would you have reacted right there in the kitchen? Or would you have done exactly what I did and waited until you had every card in your hand? Tell me straight in the comments. I actually read them. And if stories about quiet strength and getting the last word without raising your voice hit something in you, don't just scroll past this one. Hit subscribe now. Because the next story is even colder than this one.